We are interrupting NBC News Daily because we are following major breaking news. Derek Groves, the one remaining inmate at large from that massive jailbreak from the jail in New Orleans in May, has just been captured in the last 15 minutes in southwest Atlanta.
Was at this point.
Yeah, inquiring minds want to know what he had to say as he was on his way out. We did hear from U.S. Marshals Service here in New Orleans that he was not injured. No one was injured in this operation, which I think is something to be thankful for.
And then authorities emerged with a man in custody. His hands appeared to be zip tied behind his back. It appeared that he was cooperating with police and not resisting their arrest. It was a multi-agency response. A SWAT team surrounded.
Y'all remember Derek Groves, the one who was on the run from New Orleans that they didn't catch yet? Well, they just captured him a few hours ago. And I'm going to tell you exactly how they did that and everything that led up to it. This is Fugitive TV. I'm your host, Ray Marcel. And the reason why it's called Fugitive TV, because myself, I was actually on the run for 15 years, but I was living under different names. I was in a couple different countries. I even went to school. I started a couple businesses. I did a lot while I was on the run for that long. But I'm going to tell you exactly what's going on with Derek Groves. Do you remember this guy, Derek Groves from New Orleans, the one that was one of the 10 inmates that escaped? Well, he was the last inmate that they didn't capture. He was on the run for 125 days. A lot of people were actually rooting for this guy to, continue and stay on the run. Now, does have a conviction for unaliving some people at Mardi Gras. And that was the reason why he was locked up. And he was actually, I believe, getting ready to go to prison. It's so long ago, I actually forgot. But I did report on the story when those inmates first escaped. I actually think to this day that they had inside help. They didn't do it themselves. There's no way you cut through all that with just a spoon and a pencil. No, it doesn't happen that way. They had some inside help to cut through that, okay?
All we know right now, this is coming from U.S. Marshals and federal officials, is that they were acting on a tip from Crime Stoppers New Orleans and other information reporting that Groves had possibly been in the Atlanta, Georgia area. They went to a house, and that is where they found Groves in the last 30 to 45 minutes. It is our understanding from federal U.S. Marshals that Derek Groves is in custody right now. When he'll be extradited back to New Orleans, that is not known. But as everybody knows by now, Groves was one of 10 people to break out of the Orleans Justice Center, which is just another name for the jail in the city of New Orleans back in May. 9 other inmates had been captured. Many believe that Groves could possibly have been the mastermind of this entire escape.
But forget all that. If you want to see my prior videos on that, it's in the YouTube channel. But now they captured him. They captured him in Atlanta. Atlanta. Not Cuba. Not Haiti. Not Mexico. Or Canada, where I went to. They captured him in Atlanta. They captured him in an area that I'm very familiar with because I have family out there in Atlanta. And that's an area, I have a family that lives there in that same area, actually pretty much almost that same neighborhood. So they had a little standoff, with Derek. Then they eventually threw gas into the house, which is tear gas. So then they knocked down the door. They went into the house. They couldn't find him. And then Derek was hiding in a crawl space. They went into the crawl space and they found Derek.
And I know the shot's going to be a little bit shaky, but if I can, I'm going to have my photographer, Nicholas, pick up the camera, if you guys will just bear with us. And I want to bring you over here because you really can see through the garage, and it's a better angle. So if Nicholas, I know I'm asking a lot here, but through the garage, you can see what I'm talking about. The bed frame is there on the left-hand side. You can see the door through the back of that garage. It looks like somebody was living in this space. And one of the neighbors also told me he heard it this morning when SWAT knocked down the door. You could hear it down the street, knocked down that garage door that you're looking at, as well as the front door of the home that you saw earlier.
Mr. Groves was tracked to a residence on Honeysuckle Street in Atlanta, Georgia this morning, and we had sent what we call a collateral lead request from the U.S. Marshals New Orleans Task Force to the U.S. Marshals Southeast Regional Fugitive Task Force. They went out this morning with the support of the Atlanta Police Department SWAT team and after a probably 2 to 3 hour, I don't want to call it a standoff, it wasn't quite that, but after multi-hours of trying to search the home, pumping gas into the home, Groves was finally located hiding in a crawl space.
Now, they're not saying if anybody was at the house at the time, anybody else. Now, if he was at the house by himself and nobody was there with him, I'm going to tell you right now, inside job. Somebody at the house was snitching, if that's the case. Now, there are some neighbors that were saying they've seen him, but they didn't realize that was Derek. I guess they don't pay attention to the news. And not only that, news hasn't been talking about him for a while, so people will forget. They'll forget.
Yeah, certainly. And the neighbors that I spoke with tell me that this was going on since about 9 o'clock this morning. But to your point, nobody else was injured. Nobody was injured in this situation. They tell me it was really quiet. They actually didn't realize what was happening. But the one woman I spoke with said at about 9 o'clock, the officers were here. She didn't realize what was going on. And at 10:30, she tried to leave her home, the neighbor directly across the street from where this went down. And she says the officers immediately told her, get back in your home, get back inside, like get into safety. And again, she did not realize that there was a fugitive living across the street from her until all of this came out.
Yeah, I was just going to say that. So it has to be such a disconcerting feeling to know that after this happened, that somebody was living next door who's an escapee from New Orleans.
Yeah, and she said she noticed him. As we know, he was on the run for about 5 months, but she says she noticed him really for the last month. Again, couldn't identify him, didn't know who it was, but said she did also notice cars going into the back of the house, never parking in the driveway. Another neighbor told me the same thing. He also never noticed any cars in the driveway, which is abnormal, especially when you notice people inside the home. So if you're seeing somebody, like she said, looking at you through the blinds of your windows, and then you're noticing that there are never any cars in the driveway, she just said she knew something was wrong. She didn't know what it was.
And Marissa, one of the questions we were talking about earlier is, was this home abandoned? Was someone living in it? We look behind you and you showed us the house. I mean, the lawn seems to be well kept. There's landscaping seems to be kept up as well. Did neighbors talk about who was living there or whether they knew their neighbors?
So the woman, one of the women that I spoke with, one of the neighbors that lived across the street, she said that the house was sold a few years ago. She does not believe the owners that have owned it for the past few years were living in the house. She believes it was a rental. She does not know who the renters are. She said that she had been in the home a few years ago, back when she knew the owners were staying here. But as of recent, she said it has been renters to her knowledge, and she doesn't know them.
You won't be in the limelight, right? Some neighbors are saying that they used to see cars go to the back of the house and back. So that was probably Derek leaving the house, getting in the car and, driving somewhere. Someone else would pick him up and they would go somewhere, right? Now, they're not saying if anybody else helped him. Obviously, he had help. He had help to get from New Orleans all the way to Georgia to Atlanta. He had help to get into that house. So that's somebody he does know. And right now they're going to look to see who was helping him and possibly even press charges on him. Now, I'm going to tell you exactly pretty much how this man got caught. Well, they got Crime Stoppers, right? Crime Stoppers GNO, which is Crime Stoppers New Orleans. You call in, you leave tips, and then, if it leads to his capture, you get reward money, right? Now, the way it usually works is you call in, you're anonymous until you get the reward money, But you call in, you leave these tips. Usually these people that are leaving these tips, they either saw him in public, saw him walking down the street, or, hey, this guy's right here next to me. Or it's somebody from the inside. How do I know? Because I've been through this myself before, a long time ago. Now, these people will call in and they'll give you a tip. Now, if this tip matches up with police records, then let's just say on police records, with Derek Groves on his file, they know that he has family in Georgia somewhere, or he has some sort of a connection in Georgia. If somebody calls in and says, hey, Derek's in Georgia, he's at this house right now, they're not going to just go automatically to the house. What they'll do is they'll check the file. They'll check the connections first. They'll say, oh, I think he does have he's got a connection right here. Then from there, they're not going to just bombard the house right away. A lot of times what they'll do is they'll either try and get somebody who's at the house to corroborate. They'll contact them some sort of way. A lot of times it could be a couple ways. There could be an investigator sitting down the street in a car that you would never know. And then when that person leaves the house, that person can get pulled over. And next thing you know, the police or the feds are asking him, or her, hey, we know that Derek is in the house. If you corroborate, we're not going to do nothing. But if you don't cooperate, you looking at a time yourself for embedding, or helping them out, which could be a lot of time. And then in return, some people will just be like, okay, all right, yeah, he's at the house. That happens. It happened to some people I know when I was in there, when I was locked up myself. That happened. That's how they got caught. Another way for them to catch you is, believe it or not, is through the trash. So if they think that you're at that house, they have to prove a lot of times you're in the house before they just go knock down the door, right? So a lot of times let's say you take out the trash, they'll look through your trash and they'll get certain things to see if you're there. If there's cups in there, plastic cups, they'll take plastic cups out to test fingerprints. If Derek, let's say, was cutting his hair, if you look at the video, obviously he's been cutting his hair. He don't have a fro or nothing. So he's been cutting his hair. So where does the hair got to go? So if he's putting the hair, let's say sweep it up and they put it in the trash, that's DNA. They already got his DNA because he was in jail. He went to prison. Once you go to prison, they take your DNA. That goes in the federal system. So they forever have your DNA. Now, once they see that, his DNA, now they're coming to break down your door. That's how a lot of these people get caught and they don't even realize it. Okay. When I was doing this, I was cutting my hair. I was throwing my hair in. I was not putting in the trash. It was going in the toilet. I was flushing the toilet. Okay. Even though when I was in a different country, I still was careful over certain things I did. I would sit in a restaurant with my back to the wall. I'm looking at all entrances. I'm looking at all exits. I sometimes would drive with gloves on so I don't leave fingerprints. It was all kind of things I was doing. I'm so glad that life is over with now and I don't have to do that no more. And if you're interested, I do have a book that's coming out called Ray of Redemption. Ray of Redemption. This book is about my whole life story, about me growing up, because I wasn't a bad kid. I just had, unfortunate, one choice led to a lot of downfall, okay? But it's about how I grew up. It's about how I went to jail, went to prison, then how I pretty much went on the run for 15 years, how I started businesses, and then how I turned myself in and how I'm doing right now in life, okay? So once again, this book is called Ray of Redemption. Maybe you guys that, are looking at this video can get this book when it's out. Should be out by the end of this year. Send it to Derek Groves, okay? He might look at it and be like, dang, I made some mistakes. All right. But I just wanted to give you this quick update. Derek Groves has been captured. This is Fugitive TV. Please like, subscribe, turn on your notifications, and I'm out.